Hello there, kia ora. Talk about a bad week for the coalition. Oh well. But it highlights a real issue that the election is going to bring to us next year that voters should be really prepared for. We're going to be at the front line of an onslaught of information, like we saw this week. There's been some really basic data points. There are missing emails from the inboxes of the Prime Minister and the Police Minister over issues with the past police leadership and the McSkimming incident. The incredibly unpopular Regulatory Standards Bill had its third and final reading, handing over an unhealthy amount of power to a ministry headed by someone who was fine signing off contracts for charter schools with trusts that don't exist. Sounds pretty well regulated, doesn't it? The National Party is freaking out hard about Labour's CGT proposal and keeps spamming their socials with made-up scaremongering to distract from the proposal, while also overstepping lines agreed in Parliament about jumping on social media pages of other parties to try and scare those parties' followers directly. These are all simple data points that are going to eventually impact how people feel when it comes to voting next year. But then there's more complicated data points presented in less emotive ways, like a new record set in the number of people leaving the country, released by Stats NZ. It highlights how many Kiwis feel that there are more opportunities for them elsewhere, mostly Australia, again according to the data from Stats NZ. And two opinion polls have come out this week with two different outcomes. One says that the coalition would continue doing the things that they're doing. The other says that there can be a change and that voters are in favour of that change. And that's a bit more complicated when it comes to data. And how it's presented is actually also kind of complicating the situation. And voters should be aware of that. You see, with those two polls, one is the Taxpayer Union Curia poll and the other is the Talbot Mills poll. And media presented them both in pretty much the same way because for media, a handy third-party poll is an easy-to-use, pre-made news story, and media has been presenting third-party polls like this for years, which trains audiences to accept and interpret data in a way that normalizes it for said audiences. But polls have issues. For example, we currently have an overhang in Parliament because some parties won more seats than they got in party votes. Polling can't predict that on a national level, and on a local level, polling tends to be much less accurate. And the way media presents third-party polls underpins the fact that audiences, and therefore voters, are expected to accept the data as presented. But the two polls this week actually had really different outcomes for Labour and National. One had a better result for the coalition, one had a better result for the opposition parties. And it's the missing data that comes with that media presentation that voters might need to know about so that they can work out what data they're going to trust. In immigration data, it's collated by Stats NZ with no bias, purely for building information and knowledge. That TPU Curia poll, it's done by a known right-wing lobby group by a pollster that's not part of the regulatory body governing political pollsters, but is part of that lobby group. It would be a fair assumption that the poll may present a specific bias, like the fact that it has a history of polling ACT and New Zealand First higher than other political polls. Whereas the Talbot Mills poll was the most accurate in the lead up to the last general election, and it is regulated. This is the poll that saw a jump for both National and Labour, and a big drop for New Zealand First, and a slight drop for ACT. This poll also asked questions about the CGT proposal, with a broad support showing up for it, and asked voters who they thought would be in the next government, not just who they'd vote for, and the majority of respondents said they felt Labour would lead the next government. And of course, both polls make good headlines, but there is another major data point that we need to take on board when looking at headlines, data sets, and distractions. The election's still about a year away, and a lot can happen in that time, which means we'll have even more data to take on board when we go to vote. Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end of the video. While you're here, why not hit that like button or share the video or even subscribe to the channel. You could even become a paid YouTube member so you can see things released in advance, you get access to some exclusive content, and like all these awesome people, you get to have your name at the end of the credits as well.